Hello everyone, back tuning into Gazworthis on your August Bank Holiday Monday. So as always, at Gazworthis on the Bank Holiday, we are doing a historic video. We always try and have a historic video for bank holidays and special occasions such as Christmas Day and so on. And today's historic video is going to be for the winter of 2009-2010. Now, since I did 1963, as one of the earliest winters and historic videos that I did back in 2012, I think I did about on Christmas Day 2012, and since I've done December 2010, that was back in 2013, in May 2013, I have an operation on my mouth. Since those two have been done, the most requested historic video that I've been getting, with regular emails coming in at least once a month asking to see this, is the winter of 2009-2010. So finally, if you've been waiting for it, I know a lot of you have been, here it is. This is the historic video you've been waiting for, 2009 and 2010. I'll get on with it in a second. I'm going to try and keep it a bit shorter than some of them have been going on for recently. I've been doing some 40-50 minute historic videos, but the last one that I put on the homepage when I went away, looking at the hot summers, that one was down to nearly 30 minutes. I'm going to try and keep this one in that sort of realm if I can. But before I get on with that, just very quickly to say about the ads at Gazworthis, there's links to articles on all the pages. Have a browse through widgets and click through the links if there's any articles that you're interested in. And thanks very much for doing that. This video adds to most of the pages which open up content. When you watch them, they close back up again. It does all help to pay for gazworthis.com. The websites that we're using for this historic video are coming from westcentral.de. We're using their historic archive, and we're also using Trevor Harley's personal weather website. As I always have to say when I do these historic videos, it would not be possible to do these without those two websites, without the historic archive of charts from westcentral.de. That goes all the way back to January the 1st, 1871. And without the facts and figures and numbers and information that you hear from Trevor Harley's personal weather website. In many ways, I'm just an insignificant part of all of this. I just sort of am the narrator or the storyteller. But the real story, the real way that the video comes together is with the charts and the information, and both of those are from separate websites. So a huge thank you to both of those websites. Do check them out. You find a link to both of them on the links page. You can while away many a happy hour at westcent.de with their historic archive, particularly on a rainy bank holiday Monday, as I have done over the years. And also, of course, you can get to Trevor Harley's personal web website from the links page as well. Big thank you to both of those websites. So let's get on with it. We'll start with the winter of 09-10 by looking at the autumn. It's quite an interesting autumn. So we're going to begin on 1st of September 2009, which begins quite unsettled. But actually, it's a fairly mild and dry month. It has a central temperature of 14.2. And it's the driest September since 1997. However, there are a couple of wet spells. We start off quite unsettled with this area of low pressure coming in off the Atlantic. And then more low pressure moves through on the 3rd and 4th of September. This one just here. It looks like we're in for quite a wet autumn, doesn't it? Really deep area of low pressure pushing across the country. And this gives over 500 millimetres of rain in 36 hours widely to eastern parts of Scotland. Very strong winds as well, gales wrapped around that area of low pressure. But that gets out of the way, and then it starts to settle down. And this is how the early part, the first part of the autumn of 2009, is dominated really by high pressure building up from the south. Another area of low pressure moving in off the Atlantic there on the 8th of September. Once that one goes out of the way, high pressure really starts to build. And there we go, by the time you get through to the 10th, we're into a big area of high pressure. As I say, this high pressure dominates, particularly through the early and middle part of this autumn. In some ways, this autumn has similarities with the autumn of 1978. Of course, the winter of 09-10 has some similarities to the winter of 78-79 as well. So we're into high pressure conditions on the 10th of September. That high pressure dominates through into the 13th, and then we get our next little wet spell coming along through the middle part of the month. So the 14th into the 15th, we just bring a bit of a disturbance into the far south-southeast. This brings a lot of rain to Farnborough. 60 millimetres of rain falls there. So quite a wet day down in the south. But once that one gets out of the way, the high pressure really is the dominating factor through the remainder of the month. So the 18th of September, for example, sees a high pressure sitting over the country. The warmest day on this month, by the way, is 28.7 degrees at Swancombe on the 8th. Some places in East England record no rain at all from the 6th of September. So actually it's a drought that we have here from September into October, with constant anticyclonic influences, particularly across the south and east of the country. It's a little bit more unsettled in the north and west, as you would expect, of course, closer to the jet stream there. But overall, the high pressure fest goes on through to the latter stages of the month. I remember it when it was just day after day after day after day of dry, sunny, and warm by day, but cool at times by night type conditions. Again, this chart from 27th of September 2009, very indicative of high pressure really starting to dominate. Now, a little bit of a heads up perhaps of what's going to happen through the winter occurs right at the end of September. The high pressure begins to pull out ever so slightly into the Atlantic. On the 29th, that high pressure is starting to move a little bit towards Greenland. Look at that, we've got retrogression been taking place here at the end of September 09. Retrogression, remember, is where we take pressure from east to west, as opposed to zonal, which is the normal flow, where we take pressure and air masses from west to east. That's the normal flow. But zonal, but retrogression is where we take pressure the other way, from east to west. And all of the coldest winters, they all have that feature about them, that we get retrogression of high pressure from east to west. And we do get that a little bit at the end of September 2009. So we go through into October 2009. It's 1st of October 09. It's a fairly dry and quiet month, but we have here, particularly in the early stages of the month, has a central temperature of 11.6 degrees, and we start off fairly cool actually. That high pressure is out west of us. We're bringing down this northerly flow, and we keep winds in from the north and the west as we go through up to the 3rd. We get quite a deep area of low pressure rolling into the north of Scotland. This brings strong winds, gales and heavy rain to the north, but the drought continues in the south. We finally begin to get some rain moving through from this area of low pressure out to west on the 5th. That pushes in to the country on the 6th. So the 31-day drought that started on the 6th of September ends on the 6th of October, as low pressure brings outbreaks of rain finally into the eastern side of the country. However, it is a very dry month for many parts of the country, particularly southern and eastern areas. I think at that time it was the driest October probably since 1995, maybe since October 1978. But it does turn a little bit more unsettled here, just for a time through the 8th, 9th, 10th. Low pressure is close to the country, bringing rain particularly to the west, but less so elsewhere. Then we get another build of pressure through to the 12th. High pressure is returning, this one setting up out to the west of us, and that high pressure by the 14th of October is very dominant, just sitting around the UK, producing lots of dry weather. The 17th of October 2009, this was my well, now what year would this have been? This is my 32nd birthday, and it was dominated by high pressure. That high pressure fest continues into the 18th, so loads and loads of quiet weather going on into October 2009. Then a bit of a change starts to take place, actually, as it turns a little bit more unsettled from the west. Low pressure starts to move in off the Atlantic, the winds going into the south, and we start to see outbreaks of rain beginning to pile in from the west. These are mild winds, though, very mild spell at the end of October 2009. Although the mildest day for the month was actually on the 6th, when we broke the drought, when we recorded 21.2 Celsius, 70 Fahrenheit, at Coningsby. So we go through to the end of the month, and we're in an unsettled flow. Low pressure areas are starting to drive in off the Atlantic, although notice pressure is rising up towards Scandinavia. So again, maybe just little hints here of what's going to happen into the winter. But we end October 2009 on a dry and mild note. We've got high pressure to the east of us, low pressure is out to the west, the winds are in from the south, so it's mild, very mild actually, and the rain is mainly in the north and west. Still quite a lot of dry weather down in the south and the east. Now, November 2009 sees a complete change on what's gone on before, because it's a very warm month, has a central temperature of 8.7 Celsius. It's the warmest since 1994. But it's also exceptionally wet. England and Wales has 186 millimetres of rain, which is 185% of average, and it's the wettest November since 1970. I'm sure you remember it very well. It's just copious amounts of rain, particularly so in the north and west. I'll get on to those numbers in a moment. The warmest day of the month occurs here on the 1st of November 2009, where we go up to 17.8 Celsius at Tynemouth, and as I say, that is the warmest day of the month. Low pressure is driving in off the Atlantic, and this is indicative of what happens through the course of the month. So the 3rd of November, again, low pressure crashing in off the Atlantic. Notice, though, we've got a ridge across Russia. The Siberian high is already in place quite early for that to be the case. And on the 5th, actually, that Siberian high is beginning to move towards Scandinavia, forcing this area of low pressure on a more southerly track. So this is quite unusual. Instead of doing the normal southwest to northeast trajectory with the jet stream and the flow, things are going more sort of northwest southeasterly. A little bit unusual, a little bit different, just indications that the atmosphere is behaving somewhat differently through the course of this November. So that's Bonfire Night 2009. We go through to the 7th of November 2009. Again, low pressures driving in off the Atlantic, bringing another bout of rain and strong winds across the country. Really Atlantic-driven month. Again, the 8th of November finds low pressure taking a more southerly track this time, down into the southern part of the country. And then actually we do very briefly go in to a block setup on the 9th. Look at this. That low pressure has dived southwards into towards central parts of Europe. Pressure has risen across Scandinavia. The ridge has built in from the main high, which is over Russia, and the flow is actually coming in from the east. So this is where we get our coldest phase of the month. It's not saying much, but the lowest temperature that we record this month is minus 8.6 at Braemar in the early hours of the 9th of November 2009. Again, this is all very indicative of the atmosphere just not quite behaving maybe as you would expect it to at this point. So low pressure begins to move in on the 10th, coming up against this wall of high pressure that's built to the east of us. And as we go through to the 12th, low pressure really is starting to break through again then. Deep area of low pressure coming in off the Atlantic, central pressure 975 millibars, although notice height still relatively high across Scandinavia. And this explains why it's such a wet month, I think, or at least partly it explains it. The westerlies are very strong. We have copious amounts of rain, but also with pressure high to the east and the northeast, albeit not enough to give us a cold month, but with pressure high to the east and northeast means that weather fronts become really stuck and slow moving across the country. So not only is it very Atlantic driven, those weather fronts are tending to grind to a halt. This looks really unsettled on the 14th of November 2009. And then we run up to an incredible spell of weather that occurs on the 18th and 19th of November 09. in northern and western parts of the country. Cumbria records over 1,000 millimetres of rain, can you believe, in those 2 days. Of course, that's a very wet place at the best of times, but it's a huge amount of rain to be falling in 2 days. We have severe flooding through Cumbria and through Dumfries and Galloway. It culminates in the severe floods of Cockermouth. I'm sure you remember it very, very well. So what happens is that we get this long fetch southwest. Look at that. Finally, the high pressure over Scandinavia has receded back into Russia, and we're letting through this long fetch southwesterly. This is very mild, but also exceptionally moisture laden. And there's a weather front that's doing something like that. It has wriggles running along it, which are pulses of rain, and it's stuck across the north and the west of the country, producing exceptional rainfall. So from the 18th to the 19th, again, long fetch southwesterly, weather front strung out more or less along the black line here, along the jet stream, and huge amounts of rain. 316 millimetres of rain falls in 12 hours at Seathwaite in the Lake District. And for the month as a whole, Stye Head in Cumbria records 1,430 millimetres of rain. I'll say it again, 1,430 millimetres of rain falls in Stye Head in Cumbria through this month, November 09. There's 25 millimetres to an inch, so if any of you are good at working out the math on that, I'm not sure how many inches that comes to, but it really is a lot of rain. Go through to the 20th, and finally that weather front is beginning to move out of northwestern England. It's done its damage though, because there's severe flooding, but finally starting to push down into the south of the country. And as we go through beyond that, we get rid of that front and we go back into more of a showery, westerly type front, a little bit cooler as well. We end November 2009 on a very unsettled note, with low pressure diving southwards and eastwards across the country, and it begins to just turn a little bit colder as we close the door of the autumn of 2009. The winds start to turn into the north. So let's get on now with the winter of 09-10. So this is how we start the winter of 2009-2010 on the 1st of December 2009. In a fairly chilly air mass, a little bit of a ridge of high pressures over the country, but still generally the flow is coming in from the Atlantic. The 3rd of December still bringing more outbreaks of rain across the country. And it's generally mild and unsettled through this opening of December 2009. We have a CET, central temperature this month, of 3.1 Celsius. It's the coldest December since 1996, and actually this is the coldest winter since back in the mid-90s at least. In fact, it's the coldest winter since 1979. But what I mean is that we hadn't really had any cold winters up to this point, although the winter before it, 08-09, was a little bit colder, had quite a snowy spell at the start of February, but we hadn't really had a cold winter since the mid-1990s. And as I say, this is the coldest winter since 1979, so it just goes to show you can go so many years without having a cold winter, and then we get the coldest winter since 1979. And in Scotland, actually, it's even worse. It's the coldest winter since 1963. The mildest day of the month is this day, the 5th of December 2009, which has a maximum temperature of 13.4 Celsius to Eastbourne. Generally, the southern part of the country is quite mild up until the 17th, and then it's big changes, and we'll get on to that, of course. But for the north, it's actually quite cold, even from the start. Notice again, there's that ridge of high pressure up over Scandinavia. More low pressure driving through across the country on the 7th, keeping the wet, mild weather going. But the 9th of December, we begin to see a change. Yes, high pressure is building as a large feature out to the east of us, with this low pressure increasingly becoming stuck and blocked up to the north, and the flow is going like that. We're beginning to start to get warm air advection pushing up to the north of the country. That continues 13th to the 10th, again, high pressure is building up from the south and the heights are rising to the east, forcing these areas of low pressure to become stuck to the west. By the 11th, we're under a ridge of high pressure. This is not a particularly cold ridge, but it does bring our first frost of the season. So we're having a bit of a frosty spell here with maybe quite a bit of fog as well. By the 12th, high pressure is really dominant. It's trying to move up towards Scandinavia. And notice again, the low pressure is blocked out to the Atlantic, and the flow is going like that. We're taking southerlies up into Greenland and Iceland into the pole. Warm air advection, this is caused as the warm air pushes up into the North Pole. It will tend to force cold air down to the eastern side of the ridge and inflates the ridge over the UK and Scandinavia. And on the eastern side of that ridge, it will start to force colder air out of the Arctic as the warmer air pushes up by warm air advection from the Atlantic. That is a great example of warm air advection. So there's the yellow curves, the warm upper air temperatures pushing northwards into Iceland and into the Arctic, and that inflates the ridge. We start to get colder air bleeding out onto the eastern side of that ridge of high pressure. Always in a cold winter, if you want a cold winter, always one of the preceding or precursors to cold spells of weather will be warm air advection. The 13th of December 09 has high pressure still sitting over the country, keeping it largely quiet. A lot of frost at this point, but still not desperately cold. Retrogression beginning to take place on the 14th. The high pressure starts to push out towards the west of the country, begins to move up towards Iceland and Greenland as well. As we go through to the 15th, again, high pressure is increasingly and very slowly and incrementally moving northwards and westwards towards Iceland and Greenland. We're starting to drop much colder air now. That's what we're talking about with the warm air advection. We're starting to drop much colder air now onto the eastern side of that ridge into Scandinavia and Western Russia. All the building blocks are in place. Slowly but surely, we've been moving and moving and moving towards this setup. By the time we go through to the 16th and 17th, we begin to pull in colder air. So there's the upper air temperatures showing how severely cold it is now across northern and eastern parts of Europe, and that cold air is beginning to push down into Central Europe as well. And here we go. It all begins on the 17th of November 2009. As the winds turn into the east, we've got high pressure around Greenland and Iceland. The winds are turning into the east, pulling bitterly cold air out of the east. Low pressure is forming within this cold and stable flow, bringing heavy snow to eastern and southern parts of the country. This is a severe spell of weather that occurs through this third week of December 2009, with snow in many places through this period. I'm not sure if you remember, but the Channel Tunnel ground to a halt. The train from the UK to France ground to a halt for several days in this pre-Christmas period when everybody's going to be travelling about because of snow and cold temperatures. There's the upper air temperatures on the 18th of December 2009. Bitterly cold day, temperatures barely rising above freezing. A proper Greenland block here on the 19th keeps the bitterly cold weather going. Notice there's kinks in the isobars as well, indicating troughs coming down with these northerly winds, producing bands of snow. And things get more severe on the 20th of December 09, with this area of low pressure forming to the northeast of Scotland, plunging very cold Arctic winds and snow down across the country. There's the upper air temperature showing virtually the whole of the country is covered in those bitterly cold northerly winds. We go through to 21st of December 2009 with low pressure over the country. This is within cold air, so it's producing snow. Look at all the blocking over Scandinavia, loads of block conditions there, and the jet stream, of course, it's through the floor on a southerly trap. The North Atlantic Oscillation also is through the floor at this point. We go up towards Christmas, still keeping it very severe. On the 22nd of December, produces a heavy snow event where I am in Northamptonshire. We had a heavy snow event on the 22nd of December 2009. And the cold weather continues up to Christmas as well. Although it does begin to thaw out just a little bit in the south as the wind begins to turn a little bit more southerly. It starts to turn ever so slightly milder down in the south of the country. And that continues through towards Christmas. So this is how it looks on Christmas Day 2009. It looks cold. It was a cold Christmas. Down in the south, we lose quite a lot of the lying snow. But where I am, there was still a little bit of snow left on the ground on Christmas Day. It was the first time I'd seen snow on the ground on Christmas Day since, I think, 1981. And further north, we do actually have some snowfalls across parts of northeastern England and Scotland in particular. Now, as we go through towards the latter part of the month, we start to find a bit of a north-south split setting up. These are the upper air temperatures for Christmas Day, showing the cold is retreating ever so slightly. Boxing Day looks like this. It's starting to turn milder in the south. The thaw is underway. And then we go up towards the new year with quite an interesting scenarios setting up. We've got this deep area of low pressure to the south and bitterly cold air trying to come down from the north. Now, at one time, I remember this very well, when I did my weekend forecast on Christmas Eve that year, I was predicting heavy snow and blizzards across the country by New Year from this scenario. Actually, it was very disappointing. What happened is that this area of low pressure just brought rain to England West. I think there was a little bit of snow for northern England, but you would look at that and think it's probably quite a classic scenario, but it was just about a degree and a half too mild to bring a blizzard to southern parts of the country. There's the upper air temperatures for the 30th of December 2009, showing it's cold for Scotland and Northern Ireland. The cold air is still there, but it's milder further south, and it was just a little bit too mild to produce a classic snow event. We go through to the end of December 2009, and the cold air is winning that battle. So this low pressure is being forced down to the south of the country, and the winds are turning into the north and the northeast. It's still very cold and wintry up across Scotland. Of course, it never turned milder up there. And the minimum temperature we see a low minimum in the north for this month, going down to minus 18.4 at Braemar on the 29th of December 2009. Remember the woman that went out, I shouldn't laugh really, but the lady that went out to buy the turkey in Scotland, I think it was the Isle of Skye perhaps, the day before Christmas Eve, and she didn't get back until around the middle of January, because the snow, of course, started on the 23rd in the north, and she was cut off. Couldn't get back home, and I'm not sure what happened to the turkey. I think it finished up in somebody's freezer, and they had it for Easter, something like that. But yeah, it never turned milder in the north. It did turn milder and wet for a time in the south, but by New Year's Eve, the cold air is winning the battle. So we go through to January 2010, and this is how we begin. On New Year's Day, January 20. We have the winds in from the northeast. We've got low pressure sitting to the south of the country. We've got high pressure up to the north. Bitterly cold air extending down across the country. To follow the isobars back, let's follow them back, and we can see how far north the air was originating from. Follow the isobars back. The air is originating from somewhere up here in the central part of northern Russia. So a very, very long fetch northeasterly is bringing bitterly cold air down across the country. This month has a central England temperature of 1.4 Celsius. It's a very cold month. It's the coldest January since 1987. I think it's probably just about the coldest month since 1987 as well. I think it's colder than February 1991. It's colder than anything that occurs in the mid-1990s. very cold first half. The second half is a little bit less cold. It's a prolonged cold spell that we have here from the middle of December to middle of January. Probably the longest spell of cold weather and perhaps the severest spell of cold weather over a sustained period since 1979. I don't think it would be going too far to suggest that. And the lowest temperatures occur earlier in the month. So Strathallan on the 1st, actually, on New Year's Day, has a minimum temperature of minus 14 Celsius. So we're in that cold northerly flow. There's the upper air temperatures for New Year's Day 2010, and we stay in it through this first week. It's a very severe spell of weather that you have through the first week of December 2010. Look at all this blocking that's over Greenland, Iceland, an area of low pressure, a trough coming down across the country, producing lots of snow on the 2nd. Moving through to the 4th, again, it remains bitterly cold, a little bit dry here, a lot of frosty weather coming up, but we've already had a fair number of snow showers through the country. Now we go through to the 5th and we get perhaps the snowiest spell of weather for the south as low pressure starts to form within the flow. It's in the North Sea, and again follow the isobars back, look how far north the air is originating from, and the 6th of January 2010 sees that low pressure pushing down across England and Wales, and this brings a lot of heavy snow down in the southern part of the country. There's widespread snow in the south, producing up to 6 inches of snow in quite a number of areas. What happens is that a weather front moves southwards, taking a band of snow with it. It's stalled in the south on the 6th, and this area of low pressure forms within that weather front, and it produces lots and lots of snow over a very short period in the southern part of the country. Probably the heaviest snowfall in London and southern counties on this day, 6th of January 2010, since February 1991. There again, the upper air temperatures for the 6th of January 2010. The 7th sees that low pressure slipping away to the south. It's done its damage now. Virtually the whole of the country is covered. So actually where I am in Northants, we didn't have too much snow from that one. It's generally more to the south of us. Actually, February 2009 was snowier here than anything that occurred in the winter of 09-10. But of course, this is a much, much colder and more severe winter overall. So winds are in from the north. We build a bit of a ridge across the country through into the 8th of January 2010. So we lose the snow ridge, but it turns severely cold. We find Benson in Oxfordshire going down to minus 17 Celsius on the night of the 7th of January 2010. Altnahara goes down to minus 22 under this ridge on the night of the 7th, 8th of January 2010. That's the lowest reading that we've had in the UK, the lowest temperature that we've had since December 1995. We go beyond this into the 9th and the 10th, we remain really cold, locked into cold weather. Easterly winds again screaming in across the country. Strong winds bringing heavy snow onto the eastern side of the country here on the 10th. Altnahara on the 10th has a maximum temperature of just minus 13 Celsius, and we've got 60 centimetres of snow across eastern Scotland and northern England. So many, many, many feet of snow in the north. That's the reason that unfortunate lady couldn't get back home with, with the turkey. So there's the easterly wind screaming in on the 10th. Look at the upper air temperatures. Bitterly cold air is through the country once again. We go through to the 11th again in this bitterly cold easterly flow. But then things start to show signs of a change as low pressure begins to push up from the south and the west. This is bringing more snow as we go through into the 13th and on into the 14th. A real battle is taking place as these low pressures trying to reintroduce milder air off the Atlantic, but the high pressure to the east-northeast is blocking their progress. There's weather fronts stuck across the country producing snow. But eventually, we find the milder air beginning to break through. So by the 15th, finally, thaw is starting to take place. The mildest temperature of the month occurs on this day, the 16th, where we have a maximum temperature of 12.4 Celsius in Exeter. However, the cold air isn't really done with us, although there's the upper air temperatures at this point showing mild air is back across the country. But as we go through to the 18th and into the 19th, again, we've got cold air quite close to us, albeit low-level cold air. So I think around this point, the 19th, 20th, as these areas of low pressure are coming in off the Atlantic again, this time they're coming into quite cold air and producing more snow, this time through parts of the Midlands, Wales, and northern England. It's rain further south. But again, notice that high pressure is back in across Scandinavia. It isn't really going anywhere. So again, low pressure is trying to come in on the 21st, and it's trying to bring milder air, but the high pressure blocking its progress. However, by this point, the 22nd of January 2010, we are in a milder spell of weather, and we're sort of alternating milder and colder conditions, actually. Through this period, we've got milder days, colder days, alternating with one another, as opposed to anything definitively cold or definitively mild. And of course, this is what you tend to see with these really cold winters, that even when it tries to get milder, actually the mild air doesn't always come off that well. This is producing more snow here on the 25th of January 2010. We have snow up across Scotland this time. Again, notice the high pressure is clinging on across Scandinavia. The severest spell of this winter is gone now, though. It was from the middle of December through to the middle of January. That 4-week period was the severest spell in the south, for England and Wales since 1979, for Scotland probably since 1963. We end January 2010 with high pressure close to the country. We go through to the end of the month, and the high pressure is retrogressing again. I'll just go talk you through that. There we are on the 26th. The high pressure is over and to the east of us. By the 27th, it's through us, and as we get through to the 28th and on to the 31st, it's retrogressed out to the west, and we're back into those northerly winds once again, ending January 2010 on a cold note. February 2010 rounds off the cold winter, so we have a central temperature of 2.8 Celsius. It's cold of an average month, of course, especially so in the north. I think it's the coldest February that we've had possibly since 1996, or the northern parts of the country since, I would have thought, 1986. So we're into this bitterly cold northerly flow on the 1st, and what happens through this month is that we just get light snowfalls coming through, really. There's not a huge snow event, although there is one for the north towards the end of the month, but it's sort of light snowfalls coming in on regular northerly interludes. The mildest spell of weather occurs quite early in the month, where we go up to plus 12.3 Celsius at Kew on this day on the 5th, with again low pressure driving in from the west. High pressure building again on the 6th across Greenland and backing towards Scandinavia, as these areas of low pressure are being forced down to the south of the country. As we go through to the 7th, we're back into a cold easterly flow. Look at that, lots and lots of blocking to the north and the east. The winds back in from the east, albeit not severely cold, not as cold as we had it through the end of December and the start of January, but we are back into cold easterly winds once again. The high pressure is to the north and west of the country on February the 10th, 2010, with the wind in from the northeast. I think this did bring snow to eastern parts of the country on this day. There's the upper air temperatures looking cold once again. The 12th still in a cold flow, and then the high pressure's trying to get back towards Greenland on Valentine's Day, with low pressure forming to the north of Scotland. What's going to happen next? You've guessed it, that low pressure going to sink down across the country as the high pressure goes up to Greenland again. These are extraordinary charts, really. The way it's on and off, very, very similar to what we had in 1979. So low pressure moving down across the country on the 16th of February 2010 within a cold flow, producing yet more snow. We go through towards the 17th, again still in a cold and unsettled type flow. We've got a mix of some rain in the south and snow up to the north. Again, generally quite light falls of snow. You probably look at these charts and think this is a very snowy month, and maybe a little bit disappointing for snow in some ways compared to what the charts would probably suggest. Now we go through towards the 23rd, and this is when we get our major snow event for the month. The 24th through to the 26th brings a major snowfalls to Scotland. We have 18 inches of snow falling in Aviemore, probably more in other places through these 2 days. This area of low pressure is coming up from the south, very similar to what happened at the end of December actually. Low pressure is coming up from the south, the cold air is pushing down from the north, there's a battle taking place, and here we go through to the 24th, on into the 25th. You can see we've got low pressure across the country. There's a weather front probably stationary on the northern side of that low pressure across Scotland, producing that really severe snow event. It's the only real big snow event that occurs this month. There are frequent, regular, light snowfalls throughout the month across the country, but this is the only real snow event that takes place. By the way, it's very wet down in the south, with 167 millimetres of rain falling in Folkestone. So just on the milder side of these areas of low pressure, it is a little bit milder down in the far south and the southeast. We go through to the end of the month, still with quite unusual charts, still very southerly tracking jet stream. Look, the low pressure is to the south of us just here. The jet stream, where the black line is, going a long way south. Just the way things aligned, I think, more than anything else, that made it a little bit less severe, less snowy, particularly so for England and Wales. And we keep quite cold weather going through into March, actually, for quite a while in March. We're still in these blocked sort of weather patterns. It's not until later on in the month that we finally start to lose the high pressure. But even on the 12th, still more or less in the same pattern, be it not with so much blocking, but still really with north to northwesterly winds. Finally, as we get through to the second half of the month, the high pressure relents, the block moves away, it sets up across the Mediterranean, the wind goes into the southwest, and finally we bring much milder air up from the south and the west, bringing an end to this unusually cold winter. I say unusually cold because, as I say, up to this point we hadn't really had a cold winter. The winter before was quite cold, and it was actually snowier where I am in early February 2009 than anything that occurred in this winter. But I was in the plum spot, if you like, for snow during that early February period of 2009. Generally, this is a much colder winter than 08-09 and much snowier as well. And as I say, we haven't really had a cold winter since the mid-1990s, since 95, 96. So we've gone so many years without getting a cold winter, and then suddenly, like that, I'll do it again, like that, along comes this really, really cold winter, the coldest for England and Wales since 1979, the coldest for Scotland since 1963. Quite extraordinary. Just going to show you what I always say, you never quite know what the weather has in store. Right, I hope you enjoyed our bank holiday look at winter of 09-10. I hope it's brought back some memories for you. Before I go, I just want to leave you, I'm going to leave you with a few pictures. So let's just look at some photos of that incredible winter before I go. So we'll start off with this one, a snowy platform and a snowy snow in or a train in snow in the winter of 2009, 2010. I think that was in somewhere called Watlington. This is in Oxfordshire. Not sure when this is in the winter, probably sometime from December through to January. Looks really bitterly cold and very snowy indeed. Here's the lovely John Hammond on the 6th of January. I had to throw this one in because I did a Google search and I saw this one. This is the lovely John Hammond on the 6th of January 2010, forecasting that snow event for the south. He looks a bit concerned there, doesn't he? I'm not sure where this is. It's somewhere in London, I think, with a snow and ice sculpture that has been built in a park. Again, this is the 6th of January 2010. I wonder what that young lad thinks about it all. He wouldn't have seen anything like this in London up to that point in his life. I'm quite sure about that. This is from our good friend James. This is in Lincolnshire. I think this is from the 6th of January again, 2010. Again, this is 6th of January. This is in Wokingham. Really, really snowy afternoon on the 6th of January 2010. This is James again. This is back in December 2010 with lots of heavy snow falling just before the Christmas of that year. And this, of course, is the historic picture that was on the front page of all the papers. I think this was on the 6th of January 2010. It's a satellite image showing pretty much the whole of the country covered in snow, from the north of Scotland down to the south of England. The whole of the UK, away from perhaps coastal fringes, is pretty much covered in snow. And I remember that being on the front page of most of the newspapers on that day, on the 6th of January 2010. A very, very famous image of a frozen and snow-covered and ice-bound UK. Of course, little did we know that it was going to get even more severe in December of 2010. Right, that's all for now. I know I've gone on a lot longer than I anticipated. It's gone on 45 minutes. Sorry about that. But I hope you found it interesting. I had to keep going because it was such an unusual, extreme and historic winter. So I hope I've done it justice. Hope you enjoyed the video. And at 46 minutes and counting, that's all for now. Enjoy the rest of your bank holiday money. Thanks so much for tuning in on this Bank Holiday Monday. Things will be back to normal at the website tomorrow with the regular updates. So, again, thanks for tuning in on your Bank Holiday Monday. And that's all for now. Thanks for watching.